Hello everyone. In this segment, what I thought we could do is talk about some of our tools that we use during research. As you're aware, pretty much every decision we make on scene is played off of the information we get from our research team. So research is one of the most important skills, in my belief, that a technician has. So what I'd like to go over first is Weiser. And just to let you guys know, you can easily put these on laptops. They're all free. And just to show you what that looks like, we'll go find it and I'll show you the website. What I do is I just go into Google and type in Weiser. And you'll get some different hits on it. But what you're looking for is the National Library of Medicine Weiser. So they have Weiser Home here. I'll talk about WebWeiser in a minute and why I don't use it or really appreciate it that much. But here's the Weiser home screen. So if you go to download, you'll get this little register thing. Don't worry about joining their email list. You're not going to see much in there. So you can uncheck that if you want. Or they used to send out exercises, which I haven't seen in a while. Maybe I dropped off their mailing list, but they used to send out different exercises that you could do based in Weiser. So here's the download page. So Weiser for Windows is pretty much what you want for your laptop, and it talks about XP or later. I've personally run this on everything from XP to Windows 10, and it's worked good. Here are the platforms for mobile devices. And then, of course, you can get to these through the Play stores as well. Apple Store, or if you're an Android user, the Google Store. But if you want to come here, on a tablet or something, you can get it as well. So this is what it looks like. It's free, y'all. I would encourage you that if you have a personal laptop that you download it and play in it. It doesn't take a lot of room on your laptop. This is WebWeiser, and so basically you could use the entire program. It's right here, and you'll see what it looks like when I open it off my desktop. But the reason I don't use it is because, obviously you need the internet to be able to access it. So no internet connection, no WebWeiser. And so I just get into a habit if I can download the program on my computer. I always have it because I obviously for my day job operate in a lot of places where there's no connectivity. And then of course the Borough Hazmat team, we operate in a lot of places where we don't have connectivity even with cell phone. So once you download it and install it, what you'll get is this little icon right here. It shows the Nfpa 704 with a W on it, and it's Weiser for Windows. And if you open that up, you're going to get the home screen for it, basically. And I may have just kind of freaked. Oh, there we go. I already had it open. So this is the main screen that we're looking at here. And you got typical Windows buttons up here, and I'll get into some of this stuff like the Explore tool, the Help Identify Unknown, Search for Known. But before you do any of that, what you really got to do is get over here on this menu and make sure you have the right profile established. So basically the profiles that you can choose from is First Responder, Hazmat Specialist, EMS, Hospital Provider, or Preparedness Planner. And the reason this is important is, you guys, it'll filter out information based on the profile you select. So if you want more medical information about a chemical, you would want to click on the EMS. So what's a first responder and a hazmat specialist? Well, you got to cut them some slack. A bunch of doctors put this program together for us, and they don't always speak our terminology. But essentially, the first responder is the operations level firefighter, if you will. The hazmat specialist, that's the technician level. So we want to click on hazmat specialist and make sure we have the right profile. Now you've got some icons down here. You've got the tools, you got the help identify chemical, and then you got known substance. What I'm going to start with is the known substance. If we have an idea of what the chemical is or a positive identification, we want to click on known substances. And of course, you could have got there from up here on this menu as well. Now, one thing I like about Weiser is you have this drop-down list that you can see all the time. And as you type, it'll actually start to populate based on what you type. If you want a chemical name, make sure the name is highlighted. If you have an NA or ID number or a CAS number or even a stick code, you can put those in there and it should find your substance for you. We're going to start with a name here, and I'm just going to type in chlorine, and you can see as I typed, it started populating this list. So I really appreciate that. It probably doesn't seem like that big a deal, but when I show you Cameo, Cameo is a lot different, and it doesn't do that. And if you misspell something in Cameo, it doesn't give you choices. This way, if you misspell something, you can at least watch the window populate as you're typing. So we're just going to go with chlorine here because it's a fairly simple chemical to deal with. And once I click on it, you'll notice it populated in a tab. Well, if I want to compare chemicals, I can just simply open another tab and start populating all these tabs with whatever chemicals that I want. So you can run. I have not found a limit. I've had probably 6 chemicals opened up in here, and it's sustained that. I don't know if there is a limit, but it's kind of handy because then I can just go between, chlorine and gasoline and look at the data and kind of compare chemicals. So back to chlorine. You got your tab up here, your chemical, and then you've got a little drop-down menu that says Key Info. So if I click on that, I get this big menu here, and it's pretty straightforward. What I would tell you is just go in there and kind of play in it and check some stuff out. If you look at the identification, here is some of the nerdy stuff that we like. We've got the CAS number, we've got a UN number, we've got the stick code, we've got basically a visual description of the chemical. The other thing that's kind of cool about Weiser is they actually use sign and symptoms as identifiers. And you'll see why when we do, hang on. Okay, so apparently this wants me to change my color scheme to get better performance. You'll see why it does this, but it's basically when we go to the unknown. So what it does is it attaches these signs and symptoms to chlorine. And then when you go into the help identify, if you have someone with signs and symptoms, you can put those in and it'll start reaching out in the database and grabbing chemicals that have those signs and symptoms. So, a lot of times we don't think of this as an identification tool, but it really is. If we had a victim of an incident, we can ask them after medical evaluation, what kind of signs and symptoms they were having, and it will help us make sure we have the right chemical. Here is the Nfpa 704 information. So if we had a 704 placard on a fixed tank or in a fixed facility, we can use that. Here's the DOT information. So it tells you, that, hey, this belongs to 3 different hazard classes. It's obviously a class 2 because it's a gas, but it's also corrosive and then a toxic gas, so 2.3. It also tells you what WMD category it would fit in if it does indeed meet the definition of a WMD. So chlorine is choking agent, right? Here is the placarding information. So gives you what placard you should see on a container of this, and then obviously the class 8 could be a subsidiary placard. And then it also tells you from an identification standpoint what shipping containers we could expect. So it's got rail car, which it doesn't tell you a lot. It says pressure tank. And then road trailer, compressed gas or tube trailer, high pressure tank, Again, mixed cargo, because you could have cylinders of this in a box van or something like that. But that's the identification drop down. I probably won't go through all these because you guys would be tired of hearing from me. But here's the property summary. So this is other nerdy information we like. So here's our chemical formula. It's got Cl2. It's got our molecular weight. It's got our density or our specific gravity, right? Vapor density. So obviously this is heavier than air. It gives us vapor pressure, melting point, boiling point, all that good stuff. If you go down to protective equipment and clothing, it's going to tell you some of the recommendations for that. It's not really what we're used to. You know, we're used to looking at, you know, hazmat suits and chemical compatibility and choosing between like a level A or level B, typically with chlorine. But if we have a small leak and downgrade, you know, this is going to give you respirator recommendations as far as like cartridges, you know, what cartridges work, what gloves work, things like that. Here are, again, the clinical signs and symptoms. They actually link to like toxic syndromes and stuff. And I'll be honest with you guys, that's a little above my pay grade. I haven't really dealt with that a lot. I can tell you a paramedic, when I showed him this, he loved that portion of Weiser and thought it would be a big help. I haven't played around in there, but again, it's going to give you signs and symptoms, tell you onset, which is important. One thing I complain about, like with NIOSH, is they give you signs and symptoms, but they don't tell you when to expect those signs and symptoms. So Weiser, I think, does a lot better information in that area. Chemical reactivity. So the chemical reactivity tab, basically what you have to do is add chemicals. And so when you click on the add chemical button, you can search for it. And here you can put in a name, a UN or NA number, a stick code, or a CAS, and it should just bring it up in this, this drop-down menu. What we'll do is we'll just see what it looks like when we mix ammonia. If I can spell it, well, see, again, all I have to do is start to spell it and it'll come up. So there's ammonia. We'll go with ammonia anhydrous, so we're mixing two gases. And if I click add to mixture and then close this out, it's going to show you what this reaction does. And so it gives you basically a hazard summary and then tells you the gas is produced. If you want more information, you have these little balloons with the eye. All you have to do is put your cursor on that and it will bring it up. So for example, it says exothermic reaction at ambient temperatures releases heat. So when you click on that, it's like, hey, we got two halogenated, or a halogenating agent plus a base. And so the hazards are liberates gaseous products that may cause pressurization, exothermic reaction. Reaction may be particularly intense, violent, or explosive. So again, it's trying to give you the information. And that's the problem with this screen, is just moving your cursor. If you hit a balloon, it'll open up the information. So you got to learn how to run your mouse. If I go down to the gases produced, the chlorine dioxide, again, if I put my cursor on the balloon, it's going to give me information about the chlorine dioxide. And of course, here I could actually go back into Weiser, populate a tab, and put chlorine dioxide up here, and then I have that data as well. Okay, moving on. Oh, one other thing about the chemical reactivity. If you want to remove a chemical like ammonia, we just exit out, and then do you see this tab here that says add water? If you have a chemical like an acid and you want to just see what happens when you add water, you just click on the add water tab. And so again, it's going to give us a lot of information. Understand, you guys, this chemical reactivity is looking at kind of perfect conditions in a laboratory, and we may not see this if we mix chlorine with water, but this is what we could see. So that is definitely important to think about. Moving down our little drop-down list here, we've got IDLH, we've got the Nfpa information. Here with basic, you can see a little arrow there. This is really going to start just stripping down some of the key info and identification and property summary information and kind of recategorize it. It can be a little redundant in Weiser from as far as the information you get. But one tab I love, and I actually used this on an incident where a white powder was stuffed in a mailbox, is the major uses. So the major uses actually can help you identify a chemical. And the white powder that we had, the call was a long time ago, and I cannot remember the specific chemical. But when I punched it into Weiser based on what we got from other instrumentation, once I got a chemical name, I put it in here and I went to the major uses. And basically, it was a stabilizing agent for wine. It was also used in dog food as a binder, and it was also used in pharmaceuticals as a binder in pills. And so once we realized that this was pretty much not a hazard, the call was over. And I seriously, I got all that information to make that determination in Weiser under the major uses. I was a young lieutenant on that call too, and all the officers were out of town, so it was the first call I ran on by myself essentially, and so you can imagine how nervous I was and how happy I was to find that information. Again, the properties, it's just going to break it down into, more categorized information. Here's an interesting one, odor threshold. Hey, if people are smelling chlorine, about what would the concentration be? So that's some of the stuff that's in Weiser that is really not in some of our other databases. If you go to hazmat, and here I'll close out properties, and then if you go to hazmat, click on that arrow. Here it's going to give you the DOT emergency response guidelines. Basically what it does is it just brings up the pages of the ERG. It's not going to bring up the green pages. I'll show you where that exists in Weiser, but it brings you up the actual guide page. Let's see, protective action distance. Okay, there's the green pages. So they separate it out. And obviously, if you guys haven't used your ERG in a while, if the chlorine's involved in fire, I would automatically go to the orange page and do what the orange page tells me. If it's not on fire, that's when I get into the green pages, right? But again, you guys probably see this little link right here that says view protective distances overlaid on a map. I'll show you what that looks like, because that's one thing I think that Weiser does really, really well. If you just go down this list, it's got fire potential. It's going to talk about, how easy it can catch on fire, firefighting procedures. A lot of this is information out of the ERG, but some of it they add to it. And then here's an interesting one too, is cleanup methods. So when you get into cleanup methods, it's going to talk about, hey, if we can neutralize this is where I get a lot of my neutralization information for corrosives, right? So it's pretty good information. Close out the hazmat. If we go to medical, so medical's got treatment overview, it's got health effects, it's got all this information. Again, when we've done our hazmat pre-plans, a lot of the treatment protocol based on, the team being, we have EMT 1s on there, so working at that level or lower, ETT or first aid. A lot of that information I get out of Weiser because it's beyond first aid. In fact, they have information for doctors in this database. So that's really good information for us to provide, immediate care to a patient or someone on our team. And then just to finish this list, we've got some environmental information, which a lot of it's regulatory and really doesn't matter to us. And then you've got acute care. So again, it's talking about scene management and, ABC reminders, triage, all this good stuff. So this is more probably our level of medical information. So that is the menu. One thing I would tell you about Weiser is that it can be, you can get overwhelmed. There's a lot of information. And then, of course, I didn't mention it, but anything like this you can print out, and actually you can print the whole thing. So it asks you, print only the selected data or all the subsets. And if I click on this, it'll actually ask me pretty much everything in that drop-down menu. And I can print out all the information on chlorine if I want. But again, it is a lot of information. So the protective map. So the only downfall of this is it doesn't work offline. You've got to be connected to the internet. And right now I'm hotspotted through my phone. So we'll see how well it works. But if I click on the protective map, well, maybe I won't be able to show you guys this. I don't think my hotspot's strong enough here, or this computer that I'm dealing with is not cooperating. But I'll do a little segment where I can show you that after I get hooked up on the internet. But basically what it does is it takes the ERG information and it will overlay it on a map. And I think that's super cool from the standpoint that we can actually print something out and hand someone a map with the ERG information overlaid and say, hey, this is what we need to concentrate on, versus trying to tell people where to evacuate, you know, by block or street or addresses or anything like that. So it's a very powerful tool in Weiser, and again, I'll just go over that in probably a separate little video because I don't know why I don't have internet. Yep, for some reason I still have connectivity for like Chrome, but I cannot make Weiser connect. So that is the search known substance in Weiser. And again, everything I've just said is based on this one little tab, or if you go to home, this one icon. So that's the information that's there.